What if I told you a truck driver cracked the code to building a crypto empire? Meet Bitcoin Ben. He went from driving 18-wheelers to creating 6 different ways for regular people to stack Bitcoin and build wealth. This isn't just another crypto course. This is a complete ecosystem where you earn while you learn. First up, the confidential bulk purchase program. Get Bitcoin at wholesale prices through group buying power. Then there's Home to HODL. Convert your home equity directly into Bitcoin instead of cash. Need funding? The Loans for Bitcoin program gets you the capital to buy more crypto. Want passive income? Private Key Capital puts your Bitcoin to work. Hungry for something different? Bitcoin Ben's tokenized beef lets you invest in real cattle backed by blockchain technology. And if you want to mine? Bitcoin Ben's mining program gets you started with the right equipment and knowledge. But here's the kicker. Bitcoin Ben's Crypto Club pays you to learn. Earn 10% on direct referrals, 5% on second level, 2% on third level. This might be the only membership where you make more than you pay. Ben went from 10 years behind the wheel to becoming the world's most unlikely crypto expert. Now he's sharing everything through live training, community events, and proven systems that work. Ready to stop watching from the sidelines? Join Bitcoin Ben's Crypto Club today and start stacking sats while building your financial future. Your truck driving days are over. Your crypto empire starts now.
And we are recording. What's going on, everybody? It's your favorite truck driver, ex-truck driver in the whole wide world, Bitcoin Ben, live here with an amazing person, Andrew Huff. Those of you may or may not have seen his episode with Tucker Carlson. I watched it and I was on the edge of my seat, and I'm like, I got to reach out to this guy. I got to see if I can get him on, because I'll let him explain. Andrew, how are you, brother?
Fantastic. It's been a pretty quiet day. I had a job interview with a large, I think, Fortune 10 company today. I also built a prototype for a, well, I modeled, I should say, I didn't really build it. So I modeled on a computer a prototype for a fast-moving heavy lift drone. So the challenge from DARPA is to have a drone that can lift 4 times its weight. So usually aircraft are usually like a 1-to-1 ratio. And I was trying to come up with a thing, this drone that could lift 6 times its weight. So I set the benchmark a little bit higher, and I think on paper, I figured out how to do it. So I'm pretty excited to see if I can get this prototype funded and approved. I'm going to blow the competition on the water. I got this thing going in the model up to 160 miles an hour. And I don't want to give away too much detail, but the tactical purpose is like for probably like rearming infantry or delivering a weapon within 5 miles. So I think I got it figured out, and it's a game changer for drone technology. So that's the kind of crazy stuff I did. So I had a job interview, and then I did some writing, and then I hopped on X for a little bit, and then I quick prototyped a drone. I spent too much time on it. Like I spent like 3 or 4 hours, but once I got into it, I'm like, and I saw that it was possible. I kept on pushing the math and doing like the different engineering tasks to see if I could actually build this thing. It looks like it's possible. So we'll see. We'll see if they want, if I can get someone to throw some money at it. And really to build the prototype, it wasn't when I finally got to the end of the design phase, then you start to say, well, how much is this going to cost? Can I do this? And yeah, I think you can piece it all together for like about $400,000 or $500,000, which is not bad for a prototype like this.
And I've actually watched like what has happened over in Russia and Ukraine, and everything is drones. Why would you send a tank when you can send a friggin' drone? And they're really I think Ukraine had a few of them that were maybe $1,000 each, or like something like. Now, mind you, these are regular size, absolutely nothing like what you're actually talking about.
Yeah, so like you're saying like the Mavic drones, and you can put like a small payload, like a grenade on it. And I've seen all the different videos, like the kamikaze drones, and the way that these applications are being developed, like, and I think I talked about this maybe on Tucker Carlson. You look at these drone swarms, these aerial displays that they do for like the 4th of July or at concerts. That is a dual use concept for basically drone warfare. And think about each one of those things being explosive or getting a payload or a variety of different types of payloads or purposes. That's the crazy world we're headed towards for warfare. And I think people think a lot of this is sci-fi, but we're already there. And it just hasn't. We haven't had a large enough conflict where we've had like superpowers going at it, using this technology. So I think the battlefield technology we've been seeing in Ukraine is like the sort of like the low tech version. And I don't know if you noticed this, they run a lot of those drones with fiber optic cable. So they actually hang a little tiny fiber optic cable, and it's actually wired back to the controller, and then they free spool out the fiber optic line to control it because they're getting jammed.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
jamming technology we had back in Iraq for jamming improvised explosive devices. So we had different jammers on our vehicles to intercept the signals to prevent remote detonation of IEDs. And it's the same concept or technology that they use for jamming drones, whether it's the GPS signal or the actual radio wavelength back to the operator.
Interesting. It's really reaching a point where if you have something like that, you can actually go right at a certain place or a certain person, and you don't have to actually toss in a huge weapon that like blows up everyone. You could hit a certain room in a house. You just like fly it in there and boom.
Yeah, well, and the other thing this does too. So, like back in the old school infantry days, we would rely on indirect fire from artillery or mortarmen, and I was actually an infantry mortarman.
Shrapnel.
Well, so you have this sort of time lag that happens. So you have forward observers or people who are calling in to the fire direction center over the radio, and giving them coordinates of where to place the round. And then if the round's a little bit off, then you have to adjust fire or walk the round into the target. So there's a lot of collateral damage with that. And the way that I see this type of drone technology being used in the future is, to your point of precision strikes, you no longer have to call a fire direction center, or we used to call it the sheriff frequency in Iraq. So this was like a network for emergencies, or talking directly to aircraft. Like if you want to talk to like an A-10 or F-16 or a Black Hawk pilot or something, you could over this frequency. And still there's a time delay, and then a lot, the mistakes are made in communications. What this type of technology allows or enables is basically a small fire team to be able to control their own fire support. So it takes all this extra communication steps out of the system, because basically you would have you could have two teams. You'd have your alpha team or bravo team. You could have your alpha team doing the observation or the assault, and your bravo team could actually just be controlling the drone for a precision attack with a smaller munition to hit your target. And it'd be much faster because it's direct communication with one radio hop to another team, which is physically close to you. The other thing about calling an airstrike or artillery is it comes fast, right? But I mean, it never feels fast enough if you're on the battlefield. And if you're calling it in air support, I mean, they actually, the F-16, F-18, F-22, or F-35 now might be actually 50 miles away from you. They can hit the afterburners and get to you, but still going to take a time, and they might even do a pass to figure out take a look at the landscape looks like before they actually drop something or fire a missile, hellfire or whatever. So this is how it's all changing, but basically you can sort of take that out of the equation with this type of technology. There's another approach, I guess, to a battlefield problem.
All right, I love this stuff. I did for anyone who actually doesn't know who you are, would you explain your education, your history, where you worked at, and all that good stuff?
Yeah, sure. So I'm not a typical scientist engineer. So I started off my career in the military. I did 2 tours, Operation Enduring Freedom, in support of the war on terror in Central America. So a lot of narcotics interdiction, training local law enforcement, FOB security. I was enlisted. Then I volunteered for Iraq. I did a combat tour, Operation Iraqi Freedom. It started in the height of the war, so that would have been 2004 and all of 2005 and into 2006. Had a change of heart. Didn't want to be a lifetime military member. They made me it's called a Mustang. So I was nominated to go to officer candidate school for my performance in Iraq. Didn't take the commission, dropped out of the program actually, and went and took a promotion for an enlisted slot in a different unit. Was really into school, didn't know what to do. So my undergraduate degree was in psychology, thought I was gonna be a psychologist, hated working in clinical therapy. Like I have a terrible bedside manner. I did not like that fire
Get over it.
therapy. Yeah, exactly. Kick-ass therapy, we call it CAT.
Yeah.
So, you know, I loved research though, and the economy was down. It's like 2008, 2009. So I was buying time. I thought about going to law school. I clerked in the Minnesota court system through nepotism. I hate to admit it, but it's true. Oh, my cord just adjusted here. Let's see if I can fix it. I got sort of like
That's
this
okay.
really janky setup going right now because I'm trying to do this off my phone, but it looks like it's working. All right, let's fix that. So, anyways, I went and clerked to the courts, and it turned out I didn't like being a lawyer. I didn't want to be a lawyer. All the judges are like, "You're too smart for this. Go be a scientist or engineer." Well, I didn't have any applications in for anything PhD research and science, like in the STEM field, but I could quick apply to an engineering program, a master's program at the University of Minnesota in security technology, and had a minor in geographic information systems. And my research was all around national security and predicting with high performance computers, violent crime and terrorism. So I had an FBI data set, and basically this is the same kind of technology that Palantir is using now. And I was actually developing this for my research thesis, and then also trying to look at like identify the risk factors for violent crime and terrorism through like these large, massive data sets. So, anyways, I sort of figured that out. I finished at the top of my class, and I was going to work in corporate America in security technology, and I had offers from a couple of really good companies, and my thesis committee is like, you know, we'd really like you to go get a PhD and at this Department of Homeland Security Center of Excellence. And I said, a PhD, like, you know, I'm gonna go make at that time like $120,000 a year at the master's degree, which is good money. And I'm like, and I was older as a non-traditional student. By this time, I'm already pushing, you know, 27, 28, and a little bit old to be in school. I had debt to pay off like everybody else. I'd spent most of my military savings. And so anyways, they're like, well, go talk to, you know, this professor over in this department, and, you know, they've got a pretty sweet deal for you. We really think you should go get a PhD. I said, okay. So I went and met with a couple of my potential faculty advisors, and they basically spelled it out for me. Like, we're going to give you a full research fellowship, make you a research fellow at the university, which is a higher position than typically a PhD student gets. There's sometimes like research fellows in the labs, but they're making me a research fellow at the university with the highest pay possible, which is about $100,000 a year, plus full scholarship. Plus I had my VA benefit. So I was making a lot of money to go become a PhD. And the reason why they wanted me so bad was that I had a secret security clearance that left over from my time in the military. My military experience, because I actually had a lot of hands-on time with terrorists, which that's a whole nother conversation. And so I understood like the mentality. I just came out of this national security focused engineering program, and basically they laid it out. They wanted me to work with the Department of Homeland Security to analyze critical infrastructure for food and agriculture systems to prevent a terrorist using the food system as a weapons of mass destruction delivery vehicle. So bioweapons, bioterror, by basically poisoning the food supply, whether chemical, biological agents, all hazards. I started working on my dissertation research the minute that I was accepted this program, but I need to step back. So they asked me at the end of this meeting, I go, well, okay, you want me to go be a research fellow? Well, what department am I applying to be a PhD student? Well, they said, well, public health, you can apply to epidemiology or environmental health science and have a emerging infectious disease specialty track within EHS. And these two departments are basically the same. On paper at a lot of universities, there's really not any different. And oftentimes they try to combine the two departments into one. So anyways, that's what my PhD is, and it's in epidemiology for practical purposes. And so I had the public health medical training as part of my education, but all my research was national security focused. In this research center, they start bringing me out to meetings quite frequently in Washington, D.C. to introduce me to all the key players in national security and biodefense. I finished at a record pace. I actually had all my dissertation research done within 2.5 years while simultaneously taking my coursework. About
Wow.
18 credits per semester of PhD load, which is unheard of. That's about 3 times the normal load. Usually do 6 to 8 at the PhD level. My friends were like, "We thought you disappeared. Like we haven't seen you in
I
like 2.5
did.
years." Yeah, and that was pretty much it. I just buckled down and got my work done. And it's like working a full-time research position plus doing like my research, which was tied to it. Just um, I was just basically living the academic heavy research life. I finished the program, and a number of people asked me from the government and the private sector, like, "Hey, where do you want to work?" And they were trying to push me to the State Department, CIA. They tried to push me to like the FDA or USDA or one of the large corporations in food and ag, like ADM could have been an option, and there are other great companies to work with. Cargill could have been one. Um, so, anyways, I decided on a national laboratory. Um, so I picked Sandia National Laboratories, which is one of the National Nuclear Administration laboratories. Got a top secret clearance and started working in the SCIF, the Secured Compartmentalized Information Facility, on everything doom and gloom related to U.S. critical infrastructure. And then I worked on other things other than food and ag. I expanded to more public health, pandemic preparedness, assisted with writing the pandemic preparedness plans for several different agencies. I
So
did
are you
nicotine.
who actually shut us all down, or did you advise them to shut us all down? No,
No,
I'm just
actually.
joking.
So, I mean, we can talk about that. So I can quit talking about school too. It gets boring. So yeah, the funny thing. So the National Pandemic Preparedness Plan. So and this happened before I was even at the laboratory. Some really smart scientists build a high performance computing model simulation of every American. And then they started to test different intervention strategies. And one of those is called social distancing, aka lockdowns. And when they tested and simulated this, it was clear that there wasn't a huge benefit to the lockdown strategy. And then, so after you run these models and simulations, and we expanded upon this work when I was there, um, you look at different vaccination strategies. If you had a vaccine that works, you look at different types of social distancing strategies. Like, what if we just close down the schools? Like K through 12, or elementary schools, and we would test these things. You run sensitivity analysis and you look at the data, and it was clear that with the lockdown strategy that the only thing that really happens is that you crush your own society because it requires people to work. So the main thing is logistics. So transportation and supply drives everything. Electrical plants run on coal, like a lot of them run on coal, right? And so most of that coal comes out of the Powder River Basin in Ohio. And if the rail lines start to run slow because there's not enough workers and they can't maintain the lines, then basically it creates what's called a bullwhip effect. And all the coal plants start to run out of coal. And a really smart guy named Dr. Nick Kelly, he was from my actually graduate program, same epidemiology program, but with a sort of a national security spin to it at the University of Minnesota. He did his master's thesis on that, and it got published a bunch of places. And really smart guy. And so, anyways, you look at they're called cascading failures. So if you take people out of the system, what begins to fail? And everything, like you can't purify water. So the places that they chlorinate water, after a month they run out of chlorine because the chlorine delivery slow down. So it's the grid, it's water, it's sanitation. All this stuff starts to shut down when you take people out of the system, whether that's them getting sick or dying, or whether that's via a lockdown strategy. So you really have to be careful, like with your interventions. And so when we wrote these national pandemic preparedness plans for different agencies, or reviewed them or commented on them, there were some plans that had 2 weeks in there for a lockdown, but the rationale behind that was to basically give the government enough time to reconnoiter and organize resources, get all the people on the same page and trained up, and then launch the response operation, and then open everything back up. And so when they said 2 weeks to stop the spread, that's sort of like a white noble lie. there were different plans that discussed that, but it was not with the purpose of like actually stopping the spread of the disease. It was more to give the military and the public health infrastructure time to respond and stage, and then just let it rip, so to speak. So there was never intended that we were going to have lockdowns that went on for years. I mean, it was just asinine. And frankly, if you look at what happened in terms of the pandemic response policy, and from what I remember of reading these plans, not one of these plans was followed. And mind you, most of these plans were made or modeled after a highly pathogenic influenza outbreak, which is transmitted a little bit differently than SARS-CoV-2. But still, I mean, for the most part, you could say like 80 or 85% of those plans would probably be exactly the same if you had to rewrite it on the fly. Instead, it looks like they just ran a giant psychological operation against us instead of actually following what any of the actual experts had spent years on. And the sad part is the government had spent millions, maybe a few hundred million across different agencies and on personnel, developing and training people like me in bioterror, biodefense, pandemic response. There's a fairly large number of us. Then paying to do these research projects within the government and academia and the government scientists, and then other subject experts. I mean, like, it adds up. So I mean, the government spent a lot of money on this over the course of, I guess, almost 20 years, 18 years by the time that the pandemic hit. So why spend all this money developing all this capacity and capability and then not even use it when game day comes? And my wife could attest to this. I mean, I was pretty pissed when they were saying on TV, saying like, dropping F-bombs, screaming at the TV, like, why are we doing this? And like, this doesn't make sense. Like, this is not in the plan. And all, people thought I was crazy or whatever, but I didn't talk about like outside the world, like outside my job. People, this is not like conversation you have with your friends about work. Like when you're a guy like me and you work on this kind of stuff, usually people didn't want to think, pre-COVID, nobody wanted to hear about pandemic response. Like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you work on? That's like, I actually had one of my friends in graduate school. She told me, she was completely like in a life science program. She's like, oh, that's dark and depressing. And it's like, so my whole scientific and engineering career is around things that are dark and depressing. I work on weapons technology and advanced dual use technology, whether in, pandemics and biowarfare and all these things. And now it's all hot. It's a hot topic, but it never was for years. And in fact, my highest cited paper, we modeled the effect of the labor shortage on the food supply. Like, what would happen if we started losing people either to for whatever reason, all causes, sickness or illness? Would it impact the food supply? So we built this model. We ran the simulations, and I couldn't get this thing published. And everyone thought I was crazy. The national lab where I work tried to classify it. They wanted to mark it secret. And I'm like, what are you talking about? This is like, pandemics happen. I could go do this. I could do the same project as a scientist at the university. We wouldn't classify this. So I fought tooth and nail for it not to get classified. It didn't get classified. And then
let me jump in. Why would they want to? I mean, was it accurate and they're like, okay, we can't have this out there? Or was it, we don't know if it's accurate? Or, I mean, why wouldn't they just go, I think we should tell people?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So they have these people that are called derivative classifiers, and it's their job to review information to see what can be released and if it should be classified at what level. So typically, a lot of these people are sort of politicians because they're usually like managers within the system, and then they're also not the brightest people. So what happens in the national laboratory system and actually in the government is that they have the people doing the derivative classification and the managing are not the engineers and the scientists who are thinking this stuff up. So it's just really like how much of a headache you want to cause for the managers or the derivative classifiers and how hard you want to fight. Because there's a rule process of how you can argue and fight anything when you're in those positions. As a scientist at one of those or an engineer at one of those facilities, you're heavily protected. You basically can give FU to anyone else in the government. You can't be touched. and that's what's really cool. That's actually what drew me to the job. But then once you realize when you're in the job, it's like, oh my God, I have to go fight with this person. I'm busy busy as it is, and we have all the security protocol that slows us down already. It's like
what the hell? I
yeah,
mean,
what
you would assume if a very smart person writes a paper and then they hand it to I hate to say it, but a bureaucratic retard who has no idea what he or she is even reading, they're like, oh, this should be classified. How about you ask the expert who wrote it? Like, hey, is this relevant? Is this something people should have access to?
yeah, well, it's a totally impersonal process at most institutions. So basically, you have you write a note or you check some boxes with a recommendation of what you feel it should be, and then it shows up in their inbox as another thing that they have to do, and then they either listen to you or you don't. And in this case, it came back to me, and they were trying to market a secret, and I'm like, this is
Well,
I went and fought. I'm like, this is not. I'm like, this is information. These are things this was my argument. I go, there are scientists, my peers in academia right now, who are doing the same type of work, and I provided examples. I'm like, this is not this is not sensitive. We're talking about people in pandemics. Like, everybody knows this. And so here's why, and this is what it boils down to, what most people don't understand. And some managers don't understand, or derivative classifiers. The technology, or the classification system, was created for two reasons. One, to classify advanced technology. So you're worried about it falling into enemy hands. And the other thing that you classify is intelligence. So if you have active intelligence that you've collected, you usually keep that classified to protect your sources and methods of how it is obtained. Now, does this paper that in the what I described to you, does it sound like checking the boxes for either one of those two things?
absolutely not.
No, and this is the crux of the overclassification problem. I mean, this is exactly how it works. And
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think that they worry more about, if people see this, how people will react without really having a knowledge of what they're reading?
sure, that's fair, and I think it's probably accurate. Like, these people do get scared, and they're afraid of fall back or fall out from something. Um, my approach to security has always been this, and I've thought really hard about different types of security that I've worked in, like cyber, information, physical, all 360-degree security. And the best kind of security that you can have is the security that everybody can see and nobody can defeat. And if there are vulnerabilities in your security system, process, or management cycle, and someone else identifies those and can identify it, then you can correct that system and make it as robust as possible. And other people, there's a saying in security, security by obscurity. And I don't buy into that logic. It's like running hidden networks in your house, because anyone who's smart
Yeah.
enough and wants to get in knows how to find that stuff. So yeah, the best, it's a philosophical difference. And when I was in the national security community, I would always get a lot of pushback, because most people who work in national security are very much of the, let's stay tight-lipped about everything and not talk about it and classify everything. The problem is, when you do that, it creates silos of excellence, and then you can't improve through multiple other smart people providing feedback on what you're trying to do. So I understand both ways. It's important to have compartments and keep things on a need-to-know basis so you can detect leaks. The problem is, with a lot of critical infrastructure in the United States, there's already thousands of people, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people working on this stuff in the public. So when the government gets involved, and when they feel the need to classify things that are happening already in the private sector, it's ridiculous. And it really pisses off the private sector, because the government, I've seen this happen now for my whole career, 20 years. The government comes along and says, hey, industry, we identified this national security problem in your sector. And, it's usually like the FBI, and they come along and say, you have to work with us and give us this information because you're at risk. And then they scare the piss out of these executives and these big companies, and then they get scared. And then, and they're like, implied thing is that the FBI or Department of Homeland Security is going to come back and give them information to protect their system and prevent something from, or their company from getting attacked, and then it never happens. So it always ends up being a one-way information street, and very little information of use goes back to industry. And then basically, after the government leaves the room or the meeting, they just all shake their heads and say, we're not going to really work with these people. So they sit there and it goes both ways. They sit there and they smile, like the industry people, like, oh yeah, great to see you, blah, blah, blah. Oh, thanks. We look forward to, working with you. And the second they go out the door, they give them the middle finger.
What a shit show.
Yeah, well, that's the reality of it. And I told one of my friends, one of the saddest things about national security is in some domains, like in food and ag, I firmly believe we've made backward progress in food defense since 9/11. And I'm saying that very objectively. If you look at this and you look at like all the things vulnerabilities we've identified, it's simple. They use a formula in the Department of Homeland Security. It's threat times consequence times vulnerability equals risk. Well, threat is always people, right? So that's an intelligence operation. You eliminate threats, however you do it. Vulnerabilities are the things that you identify in the system or the process that are a weakness. And so when you identify vulnerabilities, then you should apply technology or layered security approaches to mitigate whatever those vulnerabilities are. Well, they've mitigated maybe a few of these things, but it's such low-hanging fruit. I mean, they're the kind of things that can be easily defeated by a novice. So this is a lot of the stuff my peers who are experts in this and I continue to complain about year over year and not see much advancement.
Yeah, I see. Why, and this is such a silly question, but I just have to ask it. Why would you ask experts, hey, would you do this? And then when they bring it back, you're like, oh, okay, we can't release this. This is such and such, or we have to, do this. You asked the experts. How about you listen to the fucking experts? I mean, it's the equivalent of hiring a plumber and then saying, hang on one second, this is how you do it. Not like that. It just frustrates the shit out of me. All right. Now, this is where I really want to go with you, because you have years of experience. You have so much in your head. We are going to temporarily put on our tinfoil hats. All right. All right. Thank you. Yeah. Perfect. Right whenever COVID hit over in China or in Asia, I heard it very early. I heard of it in like November of 2019. I think that, yeah. So this is before anyone kind of shut anything down or anything like that. I had a friend whose brother was over in China or in Asia at an Olympic Games for the military, and his sister or I don't remember, a whole group of our people got really sick. And they were like, this is some kind of virus. We don't know what it is. It's really weird. And then the next thing I hear is, oh, look at these people that are dropping dead over in China. And I'm like, well, what the hell is that? And then I talk with my friend again, and he's like, that's the thing from the military Olympics. And I never go shopping. And my friend literally said, go to Walmart at like 2:00 in the morning. And I want you to grab a bunch of toilet paper. I want you to grab a bunch of water. I want you to grab a bunch. He's like, this this is on purpose. They're going to shut everything down. And this was a very serious friend. This guy's not a joker. He never wears like a fucking tin foil hat or anything. He's very, and as soon as he said that, I went out and I got toilet paper, I got water. I went full Alex Jones on that fucking Walmart, man. And then I bring it home, and I'll tell you what, that's when my wife knew something was going on, because she's like, number one, you never go shopping. And number two, what the hell is there 100 fucking cases of toilet paper out in our friggin' garage with cases of water, and about I think they shut us because I lived in St. Louis. They shut us down in like March or April or something like that. I don't remember exactly when. And the next thing I know, everyone's out of fucking toilet paper. Everyone's out of bottled water. Yeah. And I'm thinking, God, I'm like, I can wipe my ass and have leftovers.
You should have did the pro move and just put the bidet in.
Hello?
Can you hear me? Uh-oh.
Oh,
can you
okay.
Hear me?
Yeah, I kind of lost you for...
oh, okay. Well, who knows what happened? Can you hear me still? Is it cutting out?
Yes, you are absolutely good now.
Okay. I think you should have did the pro move and you should have installed the bidet.
Yeah. I could be French. It's a question I have for you is, when did you see it, and did you recognize it early, or when did it really show up on your radar?
Yeah, so I mean, it firmly hit my radar by mid December, and that's I was actually a couple different things. So one, I was noticing everyone like getting sick. Like when you're an epidemiologist that specializes in infectious disease and flu season comes around, you're watching people like getting the sniffles and coughing. And I was going to nightclubs and stuff in San Francisco, and like I commented to my friends, and some of my friends like were starting to get sick, really sick in like late November. I got really sick. I didn't really think anything of it, and it sort of knocked me on my butt for 2 days, like a flu-like illness. Who knows what it was? And then like I was on these chat forums, and I was cruising these chat forums, and a guy that I knew from Hong Kong, actually, who's in my field, was chatting about what was going on in China and out like there. And that raised my eyebrows. And then by the time the first week of January comes, and like they're talking about this on the news, and it's starting to like trickle into the news. Also, it hit this other medical intelligence source called ProMed, which is used by epidemiologists internationally to communicate infectious disease outbreaks. So it's just starting to pop up on the radio everywhere. And that, of course, my antenna, I'm really sensitive to this stuff.
Well, yeah, that's your bread and butter.
Exactly. And like, then my friends and I in like early January start talking, and we're like, this is the next big one, isn't it? And like we all agreed, like this looks like it's it. And we've been talking about like, the 1918 pandemic in school and stuff. You don't ever think that this is going to happen in your lifetime, and you're like, holy crap. I panicked. I got the heck out of California as fast as I could. I've got rid of the house. Bought another house in Michigan, UP. I fled to the most remote area where I could find acreage, access to grocery stores, access to an airport, and high-speed internet. Stocked up on ammunition, bought a 1-year supply of MREs for the family. I was ready to go, and actually had pre-ordered those in California before we closed on the house out here. And
wow, your poor wife probably freaked out. She's like, honey, what's going on? You're like, get the kids. We got to go to fucking.
No, I was very polite with everyone, but I was getting agitated. Like I wanted to get things moving faster. I didn't let anyone on to what was going on, because I didn't want to be causing pandemic until the point where people started to talk about what's happening. People even in California are looking at me like I was crazy when all these MREs are getting dropped off by UPS, like in our driveway. And I'm just like, okay, it's on. And I was traveling, so I was wearing the full face respirator on aircraft, and people were looking at me like I was nuts. Fast forward though, with all the lying, the BS from Dr. Fauci, Dr. Birx, the flip flopping, the mortality statistics were not matching what the government was putting out. By the summer of that year, I stopped wearing my mask and my respirator. Like I went to not wearing a mask, and then I wore one of those cloth things when I have people like yell at me, like I was doing like the bandana around my face just to make them feel better. But I was still traveling for work, so I'd go to the airport, and of course, there's nobody at the airport. It's like the whole thing's empty. I remember taking pictures in the airport. I'm like the only person walking around to catch a flight. I mean, it was just all so strange. But yeah, we didn't have to do any of that. We should have just done what Sweden did. I signed the Great Barrington Declaration with the Dr. J. Bhattacharya and Dr. Kuldorf. They created. I was one of the first people to sign that. I signed it within the first week or two that they published it, because I realized everything they were doing was not according to plan and wasn't going to actually stop the transmission of the disease. I actually wrote a white paper previous to the vaccine coming out when they're working on it. I said, even if this new mRNA technology works, the reality is that coronaviruses mutate so fastly, by the time you build the vaccine, it won't be effective because it'll evade the effectiveness of the vaccine. And I was talking about this like online with Dr. Robert Malone on LinkedIn, and he and I were talking about vaccine drift and shift. And there was then I was actually started doing the sleuthing on the Moderna vaccine itself, and I found the patents and the material transfer agreements between Moderna and the University of North Carolina, where Dr. Ralph Barrick was the person who was doing a lot of the gain of function work. And so back to what I believe you said your sister and your friends and family went through at these military games in China. Those occurred in mid-October 2019, and the viruses had already been spreading in China about precisely a month and a half to 2 months earlier. So late August, early September is when the disease started to spread. I believe the evidence is all conclusive around that on two fronts. If you reverse model the epidemiology and look at the first case reports, and then you look at the intelligence of different things at the laboratory. So the story goes like this, and I talk about it in my book. A release happens of some type. It appears to be accidental. After this happens, the Chinese start panic buying laboratory containment equipment. I actually have copies of the receipts for these, and these are available online if you go look for them now. So the Chinese start panic buying all this HVAC equipment. Traffic picks up at the laboratory. Cell phone traffic picks up. Satellite imagery. So they know that there's a leak, and they're trying to plug it. So they realize that there's no stopping this at that point. Then they have what happens at the World Military Games, where they're conditioning everyone with the SARS-CoV-2 viron in the middle of the field. The city's locked down. They know that this disease is going to start to spread. And it's just a matter of time until other health authorities globally start to pick up on it, because people start getting sick, and they're going to start asking what's going to happen. So I think the U.S. government, people within the U.S. government from different agencies, probably HHS, DOD, they're aware of this. Someone makes the decision that we're not going to communicate this to the public. Trump's still in office. I don't know how high up it goes. And then it gets to the point where public health authorities are going to start asking questions on the West Coast, and that's when they declare the outbreak. So the event 201, that was definitely used to condition and train everyone, to get everyone on the same page of how they should respond. It's very dystopian. I've been a part of these tabletop exercises with international governments, with internal to the United States. We would do these to perfect our response, because usually you go through the simulation of a pandemic happening. You're asking people in usually powerful positions or decision makers in healthcare systems, in state governments,
Someone
local
is
governments.
screwing with my guy up there.
Uh-oh, what do you mean?
Oh, you kind of went blah, 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 and you're probably being hacked again, brother.
Who knows? So what was the last thing you heard?
The 201 event.
Yes, the Event 201 event was a tabletop exercise. I have participated in these internationally and also domestically within the U.S. government. Basically, the purpose of this is to give people in different positions of powers the training, the experience of how to handle and respond to the real life event when it happens. And usually you learn along the way, you make mistakes, and you do an after action report or review to go through and figure out how you could do things better. Which looks really different about this one is that it was heavily scripted, and I believe that they used this Event 201 to get all these global people in positions of power on the same page and to condition the public of how to respond to what they already knew was coming. Because like I said, it was no secret to many people that this disease was already spreading in early September. I mean, obviously the Chinese knew. And once it starts to hit the satellite imagery, then once they have the World Military Games and athletes get sick, global militaries know. Um, this research with the gain of function and SARS-CoV-2 between the United States and China was completely out in the open. None of this was a secret. I mean, there's public grant proposals for it. So none of this was a secret. I mean, and when I saw this happening, I'm like, holy crap. I worked at EcoHealth Alliance. I was a senior scientist. I was a vice president there. We were doing SARS coronavirus gain of function work in Wuhan. Like, you put this all together real quickly, you're like, and then they start talking about like the wet market. And I was cracking jokes about it. Like I actually made some like online dark humor about like the dirty Chinese and bat soup and these kind of things. But
Yeah.
I said that very flippantly. I mean, I was just doing it to poke fun at the situation. But yeah, it's all terrible how it played out. We ended up with a medical countermeasure, which was not safe or effective. And
Yeah.
it was safe for most people. Like most people didn't have an issue with it, right? But many people had more. There was a higher proportion of adverse events with this particular product compared to other vaccines in the past.
Yeah. The Event 201, or however you say it, 201 event or whatever. I find it unusual that they had an event that was actually planned. It was a planned event, and then right around there is when it all kind of rolls out, because I'm sure an event like that isn't something you just kind of throw it together and go, hey, let's have a little meeting here. And we're actually going to call it Event 201, which that's an odd name. I have a theory, and for all of the algorithms that are listening right now, this is only a theory of mine. I have a theory that the event was planned out and they rolled it out to help with the election here in America, and that it also helped to kind of freeze everything. So, because if you lock up humans that long, it really changes how they act, because humans have routines. We wake up at a certain time, we go to work at 11, whatever, we grab lunch, we have our place we love to eat, we go home, we hang out with the wife and kids, we watch a few shows, we usually go to sleep at about 9. Well, when you screw up that routine on everyone, then you can't really relaunch it very easily. And when you relaunch it, how they relaunched it, or, hey, we're letting everyone kind of slowly do what they want to do. When you do that, you can set the new how everyone acts. And so what I think it was an operation, like I said, algorithms. This is just me hypothecating. I think they used the event for the Great Reset and the election. What would be your hypothecation on that?
Well, you never let a good tragedy go to waste. And so it's one of two things. So we can't prove that it was intentional. There's a lot of circumstantial evidence that would suggest that it was. I mean, it's negligent homicide at best in millions of counts of it, because the fact is they were working. If the leak accident release is true, well, it was known they were working on BSL level 3-4 agent in a BSL-2 laboratory, and that's what happened. So if you work in the wrong biosafety laboratory without the right biosafety equipment, people get sick. I mean, that technology and that equipment and that security posture is in place to protect the people who work there. So that was a known hazard, right? And they didn't mitigate the risk. So there's that. And then you could take it one step further, like, well, did they just intentionally release it and call it an accident? That's possible. Was it actually released in more places other than just China? That's possible too, because we haven't done the studies to the forensic epidemiologic investigation to figure out exactly where this was released. So typically what you do in these, what epidemiologists have done in the past, is that you go look at the historical record of blood bank donations or other samples that were collected from like military recruits. And then you have space and time. So where the sample was collected and when it was collected, and then does it contain SARS-CoV-2, yes or no? And then if it did, you could then try to molecular type the agent to then figure out how it's evolving. And if you found any forks in the evolution, then you would know, you trace that back in time. It goes back to the time and source when you combine these three data points. That hasn't been done. And you start asking the question, well, why hasn't it been done? Well, did this leak out of Ralph Barrick's laboratory? Is this something worse? I don't know. I mean, I really thought long and hard about all of this for years now. And I just don't know. But like I said, at a minimum, you never let a good tragedy go to waste. They definitely capitalized on the system to influence the 2020 election, to also reshape economic systems. The large box stores were the biggest winners of the pandemic in the United States. I mean, basically put all the small guys out of business. And it is what it is. I mean, you could. There's really no justification for it. I mean, you have all the elderly people that were killed in several states from them basically putting sick people into institutions. I mean, this is all stuff you're not supposed to do. It's terrible. We ended up bringing a medical countermeasure mRNA gene therapy product on the market with fraudulent testing on the safety and effectiveness. I mean, just all these things. It's so crazy and so terrible. It's hard to believe that it all actually happened, but it did. And that's why I've been pushing for COVID accountability so hard, because unless we have accountability, this will happen again. It's like we're not learning from our mistakes. And I'm to the point now where I'm pretty black pill about all of it. I think there's a slim chance that there might be some accountability related to this, but I don't think it's coming. I've put forward several different proposals for me to be placed in the Trump administration, but I think I'm too outspoken and libertarian and independent minded for them to ever put me into the Trump administration. I've been nominated for one position at least. And, if you look at what's happening with the election this past week, it's a travesty. So the Democrats really just, there's a blue wave in all these different elections nationally. And now you have the White House saying like, everything's fine. You guys are panicking, and they're touting how great the economy is. Well, the fact is, I don't believe, with my expertise, that the economy is all that great. Cumulative inflation, which is the statistic used over 5 years, is at 25%. And then inflation actually began when Trump was still in office, when he approved 3.7 trillion in additional spending. And that was before Biden took office. Biden did more of the same. And, they talk about the big, beautiful bill. And now the debt the debt interest capitalization is more than the annual budget. I mean, all this stuff is so crazy. We're sort of like in a death spiral financially, and I don't, the party is going to end unless we have a major conflict. Like the only way that we get out of this problem is if we go collect our debt from our debt holders and say that we don't owe the debt anymore. I mean, that's really what the point at. And there's a lot of people that don't like the United States right now for a lot of different reasons, and I think some of their reasons are valid and some are not. And the global landscape is also changing the power dynamic. We're facing other global challenges like peak oil. I
Yeah,
don't think that
unfortunately, we can't really hear you very well,
oh no.
but it you are kind of up in the middle of nowhere, so I'm assuming you could have issues with your Wi-Fi or something. But no, it's I completely agree with you on that. That's why I am actually Bitcoin Ben, because I recognized early that, all right, we're in deep trouble. We're in a bunch of debt, and they're just going to print a bunch of money. And when they do that, you need assets that can't really be created very easily. And so that's exactly why I actually do exactly what I do, is because, I mean, we've reached a point where every 63 days, we owe $1 trillion more. In January of this year, it was every 100 days. Now it's every 63 days. That is exactly what you just said. We're going down, and we're going down quickly. And what do you think? And this is a large question. Do you think that America, say around 1910, 1911, 1912, 1913, when the Federal Reserve was rolled out, do you think that there was a long agenda to eventually bring us down? Or do you think this is just, hey, there's people in the government, they're all fucking retarded, and they just kind of screwed up really bad, and unfortunately they just keep on screwing up? What's your view on that?
Well, the government typically doesn't attract the best and the brightest, and in some places it does, like where they actually pay way above like the government pay scale. So if you work in like one of the federally funded research and development centers, the national labs. Oh, am I cutting out again? Pause
No,
on my
you're
side.
good.
Okay. So if you work in like one of the think tanks or the FFRDCs, they pay much better than the government. They get a lot of the best and brightest minds because they have to compete against the banking industry and then also against the tech sectors. And they pay those people very well. But then when you get to the actual, bureaucratic positions in the government, man, it's pretty hit or miss. There's some people who are really smart and really good, and then there's a ton of dead weight. I'd say it's like 80 to 90% dead weight in the federal government, which is sad. And then if you look at like the banking and the Federal Reserve, those people get paid really well because the Federal Reserve works off fees into the bank. So like how the payment structure works for employees within the Federal Reserve, I have a friend who works there. It's all based off fees, and it's not so bad. Like it's a good place to work if you're a government employee. Now, with that being said, like the idea that the idea where they allow banks to loan money which doesn't exist, and based on whatever that rate is a pretty crazy idea. Like, so it allows these banks to overextend themselves, and then they start doing all this crazy, like the default credit swaps and value at risk calculations, and you look at how it creates these weird feedback loops, and it's all fine until there's a margin call. And that's what caused the last banking crisis. And it was sort of flashing um, um, about 2 or 3 weeks ago with with consumer loans and lending. So the same kind of thing started happening. You start seeing these signals, and then they're talking about having to bail out banks again. And the system would self-correct if we allowed the banks to fail.
Yep.
And if we keep bailing the banks out, the banks are going to keep engaging in the same kind of behaviors because they can be very reckless with their creative finance mechanisms and get away with it. And if everyone's getting paid at the end of the day, especially the people at the top, there's really there's really not much on the line for them to lose, right? They can't lose. Like, so if they can't lose, then who cares if they're taking wild, crazy risks? And that definitely then feeds into, like, the value for Bitcoin or metals. I mean, that's what people seem to be getting into, one of the two things. And I don't know. It's like, it's good to know some trade and have some skills. That's the way I look at it. So if the currency collapse, um, if you're one of these people that like manages like process at a corporation, those jobs are going to get automated.
Oh yeah, you're toast.
Yeah, and then on top of it, then if the economy collapses, like, what do? Your only options are like manual labor. So if you have some technical skills or trade, if that's it. I mean, like, that's going to be the thing which has value. Can you work on machines? Can you work on computers? Can you write software code? I mean, you could trade those things, right? Like, if you know somebody who, so it becomes a barter system, and it's really hard to get by that way because you're always trying to find, it's inefficient, right? Because you're always trying to find a person that wants to trade with you for your skill set, and that's why we have cash in the first place.
Yep.
So,
What are your views on AI and and humanoid robots? How how do you see that kind of rolling out, and how quickly do you think it rolls out?
So sports and entertainment drive technology, at least consumer technology, and this has been a fact for years. So defense drives it, and then that usually trickles into the consumer market. And the other side is entertainment and sports, and more on the entertainment side. And I'm not a fan of what I'm about to say, but definitely the pornography industry and sex application of like sex robots will be the first type of humanoid robots adopted. And you already see it selling it, like these kind of things at the Consumer Electronics Show. They've had these real dolls ever since like Howard Stern had them first, like in his studio, and he was promoting these things back in the late 90s or early
Yep.
2000s. And now they've added robotics to these things with like AI chat stuff. So this is where like the humanoid product will be developed first for like the realism one, and then like the realism aspect of it. And then of course you have like the straight up robots that they're building for warfare capability. Like they have, if you look at like what General Dynamics is making some of the stuff, and BAE Systems and Lincoln Labs, you look at some of the big places in the East Coast around in Massachusetts that work in defense, they're building these kind of robots. So they're coming. I mean, I don't know how long until they're like lifelike and affordable, right? So it's one thing to be lifelike and have all the technology. It's another thing to actually be affordable, that you can actually like put up the cash to buy one of these things. I mean, how many people would spend $100,000 on one if they existed and it was perfect? It was just like a woman you could, a real woman, real woman, I'll say, would you spend $100,000 on one? I don't know, but
so it's a whole lot cheaper than getting married.
I'd like to stay that way, so I won't comment.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, I'll tell you what, Andrew, I appreciate your time, and this has been a great and wonderful talk. And is there any question I should have asked you that I didn't, that you think that people right now should hear?
Well, I guess I can just answer the question. I think the most important thing for people to hear right now is that we're now living through the next technological revolution. It's a very amazing time for us to all be alive. And my advice to everyone is not to be afraid of it, and not to have ideas that you think you're going to ban these things, because nowhere in human history have we ever banned technology to limit our growth and advancement. Everyone needs to embrace this technology and figure out how to make their lives better, to make it as painful as possible. Because what's going to separate people in the next 2 years from apart in society, what will set people apart, is their willingness and ability to adopt all this new technology that's emerging into your life. And if you don't adopt it and learn how to do these different things, regardless of your age, or regardless of how much you like it, you will be left behind.
All right, brother. Well, I appreciate your time and enjoy your loneliness up in the UP, which I guess if you got your wife, you're good. You're good.
Yep, wife and child, and yeah, and a couple dogs, and I have neighbors and other people I go chat with. I mean, if I want to be social, I can. I choose not to.
Yeah, I don't blame you. All right, brother. You have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
What if I told you a truck driver cracked the code to building a crypto empire? Meet Bitcoin Ben. He went from driving 18-wheelers to creating 6 different ways for regular people to stack Bitcoin and build wealth. This isn't just another crypto course. This is a complete ecosystem where you earn while you learn. First up, the confidential bulk purchase program. Get Bitcoin at wholesale prices through group buying power. Then there's Home to HODL. Convert your home equity directly into Bitcoin instead of cash. Need funding? The Loans for Bitcoin program gets you the capital to buy more crypto. Want passive income? Private Key Capital puts your Bitcoin to work. Hungry for something different? Bitcoin Ben's tokenized beef lets you invest in real cattle backed by blockchain technology. And if you want to mine? Bitcoin Ben's mining program gets you started with the right equipment and knowledge. But here's the kicker. Bitcoin Ben's Crypto Club pays you to learn. Earn 10% on direct referrals, 5% on second level, 2% on third level. This might be the only membership where you make more than you pay. Ben went from 10 years behind the wheel to becoming the world's most unlikely crypto expert. Now he's sharing everything through live training, community events, and proven systems that work. Ready to stop watching from the sidelines? Join Bitcoin Ben's Crypto Club today and start stacking sats while building your financial future. Your truck driving days are over. Your crypto empire starts now.